Good afternoon and welcome to another one of IPC's exciting training webinars. Today we will be focusing on the Mitel MiVoice Connect administrative training, and the training will be led by one of our senior support engineers, David Shaw. I've also asked one of our design engineers, Jonathan Anderegg, to be on the call. And as a reminder, all of these webinars are being recorded and are available from the website as well as IPC's YouTube channel. So with that, I will hand it over to David Shaw here. And also, as questions arise, if you can just leave those in the question section, we will try to get to those at the end. Typically, the first 45 minutes is going to be led by David Shaw, and then we usually have 10 or 15 minutes of Q&A afterwards. So with that, thank you for your time. And David, here I will pass the screen sharing over to you.
All right. Thank you. So you guys should be able to see my screen now. Alrighty. So as Stephen mentioned, we are going to dive here into the MiVoice Connect Director portal. A couple of things you'll hear me say today. We're going to look at it from a couple of different perspectives. One of the perspectives is going to be for folks who have never seen the platform before and are going to be looking at it for the first time. And the other one is going to be for the folks who are thinking about upgrading to the MiVoice Connect platform or who have already upgraded to the MiVoice Connect platform. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. First thing we're going to jump into here is going to be the administration section. The administration section obviously is going to have the parts where most of us live each day with our groups and different things that we build. So let's go ahead and jump straight here into the user profile. Obviously, this is where we build our users out. For those of us who have seen the platform before, a couple of things have changed here, just in the way that we view the users and different things as far as your configuration. But everything is the same as far as the functionality of it. Just has a bit of a different look and feel, and that's kind of the overall feeling for the whole director portal is going to be just an overall look and feel is a bit different. So just something that's different here as we kind of jump through the users is instead of having all the users on one single panel, all of our users are at the top, and then we can see the configuration of those user profiles down here at the bottom. As we kind of jump through here and the different things that we can do under our telephony, where we can kind of change the personalized settings for the user, our voicemail. You can set where your password is going to be. If you want voicemail to be delivered as a attachment to the user's email, you can set that up here. The biggest difference here for users, as far as the a change in how you do something, is going to be this routing section. So when we talk about our different call handling modes, like the out of office or vacation mode or in a meeting, this is now where you define those settings, right? So the only other section here that's a bit different is the ring lead section, and this just tells you, hey, when I'm in this call handling mode, like available or out of office or different things like that as a user, I want my available mode to be utilized or out of office, and those things can be forwarded to like a cell phone or another internal extension. Wherever you desire your call to go, you can forward it or send it straight to voicemail, depending on what that call handling mode is. All right. So that's the main sections here of the user profile. And as we go on, I'm going to kind of give a general description of everything. But again, as Stephen mentioned, if you have any questions, you can ask those, and we'll get those answered for you. All right. So moving on here into programmable buttons. This is where we're gonna have the different buttons on your phone be able to perform different actions. You have a whole kind of myriad of things you can do here, such as speed dial or monitor an extension, intercom, different things like that. So, these are where you're going to define those buttons for your users. And when they click on one of those buttons, it's going to perform that action for them immediately. All right. So that's set up that way. All right. Here in the escalation profiles, you can do different things like have a user, like if a call comes in after hours or anything like that, the call can be set so that it's marked as urgent, where it can call someone and they'll know, hey, I have a call after hours or something along those lines. That's typically how most of our customers utilize that feature there. All right, so jumping down here in the user groups, this is where we're going to define where our different users have different permissions. If I want to set up a user group, for example, that is only, like if I have a lobby phone, for example, in that lobby phone, I only want that to be able to dial internally. I can come here and I can set up a special user group that says, here you can only dial internally only, right? So only been able to dial extensions and not been able to utilize something like international dialing if your company has that, that ability with your phone carrier. I can define different things in my voicemail class of service where I have an executive group who I want the ability to be able to have more than the default of 60 voicemails into a mailbox, right? So I can define that. So those are just kind of the different features, and you can dive into it a bit more when you look into your class of service options and how you assign a user to that class. All right, so let's jump into our trunks. Mainly the big part here is going to be our trunk groups, right? So where we define our PRI, whether it's going to be like Verizon or Comcast or something like that, any one of those carriers. These are those sections, right? So we can tell exactly what what the number of digits is going to be for inbound calls. When we look at our outbound tab, we can define our area code and also assign it a local prefix list when we want to, utilize the local dialing and manipulate it that way. Same with SIP trunks or analog trunks. These are all defined under that trunk groups category, right? So this is where you're going to do all the defining there. And our DID ranges, these are going to be obviously when you have your blocks of numbers. You want to define those to where we assign those to users. That's where this gets built out. You can also look at your DID map, and you can see exactly what numbers go to what users. There are a few different sections you can do that, but this is just one of them. Let's see here. Our DNS map. This is kind of similar in the fact that you can determine where an inbound call goes depending on what the digits are that are being dialed, right? And you'll send it to whatever destination, whatever extension you want, right? So that's where that's going to be defined. All right. A conferencing map, if we have an SA100 set up and we have a conference number associated with that, we're going to point that conference number to this conferencing map, and that's how your calls are going to hit that internal conferencing that you have set up. Right? And our off-system extensions, this is mainly used when we, let's say, tie one phone system to another. So if I have an older like PBX system and I'm bringing in a new Mitel MiVoice Connect system, and I want to send my calls between the two systems, this is where that is defined and where I can set that up. SIP profiles, these are default defined. So typically, if we're dealing with just various things of SIP, right? So whether we're dealing with SIP trunking or a like a SIP phone, a conference phone, or something along those lines, that's where that's going to be defined. And our ISDN profiles, those are just ways to manipulate your inbound calling. All right, let's jump down here to the telephone section. Here is going to be where we have our telephones defined. Right, so if I have a phone, we can see what user it's assigned to, and what IP address it has, along with the MAC address of that phone as well. Your phone address mapping is where you're going to define the whatever DHCP values or whatever range that you have assigned into your server. That's where you're going to have this assigned into the Mitel system as well. All right. We typically deal with the anonymous phones too often, or either the vacated phones. This just shows you a list of phones that may not be used or something along those lines. Actually, we'll go ahead and jump down here into the appliances and servers. These are where we define our servers and our voice switches, right? So, we'll have our virtual, we have a virtual phone switch defined here, and we can see the IP address it has, MAC address it has, and we can define what the capabilities of that voice switch is. Same thing kind of with the server, where we define the IP address and different things like that. And this is also where we import our certificate. If we're utilizing a third-party certificate, we can import it into this section. And spare equipment is just going to be where you define a voice switch for redundancy purposes or failover purposes. If one of your voice switches goes down, you can have another one step up here and take the place of that voice switch. All right. I'm actually going to skip down here to the features. As I mentioned earlier, there are a few different places where you can see where things like phone numbers are assigned. This is one of them. The system directory use this a lot when we're looking for a specific extension, and who's assigned to what specific direct dial number. Right. All right. Here are auto attendants. Our auto attendants obviously are going to be where we have our messages, our greetings played when someone dials into our system, right? So within the auto attendant, I mean, nothing here has changed. Again, the look and feel of it is a bit different. We can have any message that we want to import, have that played in the options, right? So this is where everything is defined here for our auto attendants. All right, let's jump down into our call control. If we have account codes defined for our users to be able to dial outbound, so you have to have an account code to dial out. This is where you're going to define those. All right. And our bridge call appearances. Bridge call appearances is pretty much like another button that's going to be defined on users' phones, and it acts as a group, right? So whenever a call comes in, we can have it set so that it gives your phone an alert, and multiple folks may be monitoring that same call, and any one of those folks can pick that call up, right? See this a lot of times when you have like an administrative assistant and like an executive or like a lawyer or something along those lines. When a call comes into their private profiles, that assistant may pick that call up for that person, or you may have a group of assistants that pick up for like a specific executive. So that's where you're defined that here. All right. So our hunt groups are similar, but hunt groups are going to actually ring a specific group of people. So you actually get a phone call to your phone, right? So we can have it set so that, if a call comes in and I want it to ring a specific set of members here, this is where you define your members for the group, right? I want that phone call to ring those members that I added 3 times in a top-down fashion. So, meaning the first person here who would get the call in this group would be Ron Burgundy, next followed by Ricky Bobby, Bubby Elf, right? So that's the order in which the top-down works. Or we can have it set so that it rings that group simultaneously, right? So you can have those either way. And then on that last ring is going to get sent to our no answer destination. All right. So we can point that to another group or a specific extension, voicemail, any of those things here. You can also define our schedule that we want that group to be run. Right. So if we have our off hours and holiday destination, wherever that extension is going to be, and then this is where we define that schedule, right? So if I want calls to ring from 8 to 5 and then switch over to off hours, is they're going to ring that off hours extension, and it even tells you what mode it's in based off of the schedule that you define. And we'll kind of get into that here in just a second. All right, paging groups. Paging groups are going to be utilized a lot. If you have maybe a warehouse or maybe a school system where I want to call a certain group of phones, and I want to say a certain message over those phones. This is where we're going to define that group, right? And we can kind of define the different the list of who is in that group, right? And you can have multiple groups, obviously for multiple extensions, just depending on how you want to do it. All right. Let's jump here into our pickup groups. Pickup groups are going to be kind of similar in the bridge call appearance. The only difference is here is that you don't get an alert of any sort. You really just see the call come into that group, and you're able to press a button and answer that call, right? So it's just another button programmed on a user's phone where I can go in and pick up any call that comes into that phone. All right. So that's where kind of the distinction is here between the pickup groups and the bridge call appearance. All right. Let's jump down here into route points. Our route points are going to be kind of as they sound, just another route to a certain destination. We most commonly see these. Let's say if we have an answering service after hours, and we have our calls come into a specific group or maybe a message that plays beforehand, we're then going to send that call into our route point, and our route point is going to then do whatever we decide for it to do, right? So if I look into the routing here, and I can say, all right, during business hours, I want calls to come into my group first, right? But then after hours, I want calls to be sent to like a voicemail or to like I said, an external phone number, like an answering service. That's where I'm going to define those settings, right? Same with holiday or custom, right? We can also give these route points mailboxes so that if someone wants to leave a voicemail, they're able to do that, and we can have someone go in and check that voicemail, right? Or we can have it forwarded to, let's just say, like a manager, for example. That's another option. We can also have it set so that we can import or have the name of the route point played before someone gets there, before they get to the voicemail. So that's an option. All right. I'm actually going to jump down here into the music on hold. This music on hold here is going to be file music on hold, right? So if you have a professional service record a message for you, we're going to come here, we're going to upload that file, right? And when we upload that file, the place that we define when that message is played is going to be in our user group, right? So if I want that message that I had the professional service recorded, if I wanted to play for a specific group, I'm going to come here and I'm going to define it here in the music on hold section under the user group. So again, the user groups are going to be where we define various things for our groups of users, and that's why it's important kind of to segment them out. Or if you're a smaller company, most of the time folks will just have the same music on hold or the same permissions for everyone across the board. All right. Here are our extension lists. The extension lists are going to come into play again in the paging groups as well as the pickup groups. And the other place is going to be on our auto attendance when we dial in and someone says, I want to press 1 to dial by name. What it references is going to be the extension list, and that's where this is defined. So if you don't have an extension specifically defined in this extension list, when someone goes to look for it, it's not gonna be able to call them. So it's kind of important to keep the extension list updated, if you will. All right. So the big section here in the voicemail section is going to be in our voicemail options, right? So within the MiVoice Connect system now, we can define different things like the voicemail, the minimal voicemail password length, right? So if you want to have a more secure, lengthier voicemail password, you can define that here, and you can also have it set so that it disconnects anyone who goes to check their voicemail a certain amount of times and doesn't have the right password, right? So, and the different things like the message length that's accepted and that's defined in milliseconds, right? So you can have that set here. And the other big thing here is going to be the from address for the email notification. So when we get those voicemail emails, this is where we define the email address that it's sending from. And you want to have that set up as a mailbox user in your Exchange or maybe Office 365 or whatever mail service you're using. Right, jump down here into our work groups. Our work groups are going to be pretty similar to our hunt groups. The biggest difference here with the work groups and the hunt groups is going to be the ability to queue calls, right? So with hunt groups, if you call into a hunt group and you have someone available to answer the call, great. But if no one's available to answer that call, it's going to go to that hunt group's busy destination, right? So if we jump back here into our hunt group, or we define it as a call stack full. So the call stack being everybody's engaged on calls already. It's not going to queue that call. It's just going to send it automatically to another extension. But if you want the ability to have calls queued, so you have members answer that call once they've finished up with another call, you're going to have that defined here as a work group, right? So the other big thing with the work groups is going to be if you want your work group agents to be able, so the agents are just the members, if you want them to be able to log in and out of your work group, you're going to have them defined with a work group agent license, right? So I'll jump back here to the users. Right, so under our access license, we have our work group agent license where we can assign them that, or our work group supervisor license where we can assign them that. So the work group agent, again, has the ability to log in and out of their work group. Whereas if you just define that user as a work group member without a work group agent license, they're going to remain logged into that work group at all times. All right. And jump back down here to the work groups. And the other thing is, so might have saw the work group supervisor license defined. The work group supervisor can log agents in and out of the queue, right? They also have the same ability as the work group agent to log in and take calls or whatever the case may be, right? So that's the biggest thing here. Let's go ahead and actually save this work group here really quickly. I want to show you guys the queue handling. So the queue handling, as I mentioned, calls can come into queue. it's kind of like it's kind of going to create you a mini call center, if you will, right? So as a caller is in the queue and they're waiting to get picked up by someone, we can have up to 5 steps defined for that caller, right? So we can have on our first step, thank you for calling our company. Please wait while the next we have an agent. The next agent will pick you up out of the queue. Whatever you want to say. You can have that message defined here. You can also give the caller options to leave out of that queue, right? So we have all the same options as we would an auto attendant message, right? So if we want that caller to be able to press 1 to maybe get transferred to the operator, we can do that, all right? Also, if we want to then, after 60 seconds, go to another step, we can have that defined here and maybe play a different message where the caller has different options, right? And maybe we can skip the third step and the fourth step, and then we can have the call go to the last step and get sent to our overflow section, right? The overflow section will then send the caller to a different group or maybe an extension if they never got picked up out of the queue after a certain amount of time, right? And we even have it set here so we can give our agents a warning that, hey, we have 3 calls set in the queue. We need to get wrapped up get these calls wrapped up and answer more calls out of the queue. All right. So we have all of those same options. And as far as the routing, all the same options. As far as when a call comes into a work group, we can have this set so it's the top down. So first agent and then the next agent, round robin, where it brings everybody kind of in a circular motion, if you will, similar to top down. Longest idle, whoever was the person who took the longest or hasn't answered the call in the longest amount of time, or the simultaneous ringing where it rings all the users first before it goes to a queue or to a different call routing destination. All right, so looking into our schedules. Schedules are pretty much the same, but just a different look and feel, right? So we have to define our time in the 24-hour clock, right? No longer in the 12-hour clock, but still all the same, functionality as far as the on hours. You define your holiday, and one thing I want to mention with the holiday schedules is I see this a lot, kind of as a suggestion. What the way I like to come in here and define our holiday schedules is to create one holiday schedule, but then add your holidays in after that, so you don't have to keep choosing. So for example, if I went and I said second holiday schedule and I save that, right? So this holiday schedule that I have defined now, I have to then switch it to a different holiday schedule when I'm looking at one of my groups, like for example, my work group, right? So if I look here under my routing and I go to routing and then I go to my schedules, now I have 2 different holiday schedules defined, right? Just keep it under one holiday schedule, so that way it's already defined for you. You don't have to then go back to your different groups and choose a different holiday schedule. So that's just maybe a little tidbit to take and use. And let's see here. So go into my system settings. And our system settings here, this is where we have our sites defined, right? So, we can define what our area codes are going to be, different things like our operator extension. So this comes into play when someone goes to maybe look like for a personal assistant, or you press 0 a lot of times into a voicemail, it'll get sent to our operator extension, right? So this is where we're going to define that a lot of times. All right. So let's go ahead and actually jump forward to the system. System settings, this is where we're going to define our licenses, right? So When we get a new license, we're going to import that here. Administrative permissions, right? So you want different folks to be able to log into your director. You can define those here. A big thing here is going to be the roles, right? So under the roles section, I can say, hey, I don't want users to just all have system administrator permissions, right? So I just have someone who I want the ability to come in and run the report, right? So that's already predefined for you. I don't want, as a system administrator, I don't want my help desk folks to have full administrative rights. So I can come in and define them as a technical support role. And as you kind of look throughout the settings here, you can choose and define specifically what you want those roles to be able to do, right? Another a big thing that was added here in the MiVoice Connect platform is the ability to check user logins, right? So our user logins, you don't know who logged in when and made what change. That's now an option for you to come in and take a look, right? All right, so our security, the biggest things here are going to be this is where we also download our sign-in certificate request if we're going to use a third-party certificate for the Connect system. But the other thing is going to be the password policy. Here you can define kind of the password strength that you want folks, the minimal strength that you want the folks with the Mitel Connect client on their PC installed. You can define that strength there. How many times they can reuse a password, the amount of time that it takes for that password to expire, and the number of attempts that they have before they're locked out. The only downside to it here is that there's no true way to go in and unlock an account, right? So they actually just kind of have to wait for that lockout time that's defined here to time out. All right, so that's kind of the only downside there, but it's an option nonetheless. Last thing I'll show you guys here is going to be the download section. If you're on a PC and you don't remember, you don't have the Mitel Connect client downloaded to like a network share or something like that, you can hit the URL of the Connect Director portal and come under your download section and download the client straight from here. All right, so this is also where we download the other appliances and things like that. All right, the reporting, this is where our reports are pulled. So you click on reports and call details. You can click on the list here and run the different predefined reports that are available for you. The same as on the old, kind of ShoreTel 14.2 legacy platform. Those are the same kind of reports that we have that you guys can pull here as well. Nothing really changed here. Just be mindful of the 24-hour clock for the end time in the reports. All right. Let's see here, documentation. If you're curious and just want to kind of look through the guides, those are defined. There's actually here, and you can download them. And it'll send you. You click on one of the links, and it'll send you straight to the Mitel site, and you can download the guides there. All right. So looking here under the status and maintenance section, here's going to be kind of that old quick look platform for the folks who are familiar with the older platform. This is actually the first screen that you see when you get logged in, right? So this is your dashboard, right? Here under the dashboard, you can have your topology and if you have multiple sites, it'll build out what your sites look like and how they're all connected. All right. So if you have child sites under different parent sites and different things like that, that's all defined here in this section. Connectivity here shows you all of your devices are able to communicate with each other, so that's big in troubleshooting, right? So if you're having an issue with your users being able to dial from one site to another, one of the things we like to check first is going to be the connectivity, and it tells us if like a certain voice switch is not able to talk with another voice switch, let's say at another site, that's going to be something that we're going to look into, all right? So here into the status and maintenance, you get an overall view of your system here. If you have like different multiple sites, and it'll tell you, how many appliances are defined under that site. It's kind of a 30,000-foot view here of your system. And you can kind of get a little more detailed into your sites and seeing what's going on with those here under the site level. Again, this is all just kind of status and maintenance, so no configuration, just kind of looking to make sure everything is okay. The biggest thing and typically look at here is going to be appliances section, right? So we're able to see what the status is of our switches and our servers. What are those looking like, right? So if we have an issue with users not being able to dial out, I can come in here and make sure that our switches are up and different things like that, right? A little tidbit here I'm going to add in is if you have a bigger system, or actually maybe easier to show you here under the users, is the search. The search option now under the Connect platform. So I'm going to use some users for an example. So if I go to the little magnifying glass here, and let's just say I don't know how someone's name is spelled. What I can do is, I can hit the star key, and I can just click the beginning letters of their name, right? Star, and let's see, I'm going to Chaz Michaels, and I click that here. That shows me that user, and it jumps to them without me knowing, what how to spell their name, right? So that's kind of just a little tidbit here that I wanted to throw in there. And I was looking at that as we were looking at the appliances. If you have a lot of appliances defined, right, and you want to look at, let's say, a certain site, you don't have to define the entire site. You can just put the star and then the beginning letters of it. Same with the appliances. Anywhere where you see that you have a search option, you can use that star to your advantage, right? So it's kind of a little tidbit there. Servers is also going to be where you're seeing the different things like your services, making sure that all of those are running. You can see that straight from Director without having to log into the server and go into the services specifically. Here's going to be your IP phones, the firmware status, and making sure those are up and green. Same thing here. The other biggest thing is going to be your voicemail, kind of keeping an eye out for how much free space you have for your voicemails. That's kind of key here, right? Also like to point to for your reporting, if we're looking at our reporting options, and we're talking about space on a server, we can define, how long we want our call history to be defined. To be archived for, where we can go back and run reports for, but just keep an eye out on how much space you have when you define, how long you want your call history to be kept for, right? And that kind of includes unanswered calls. I think that's the main reason why they don't automatically default check this box, is because it takes up a considerable more amount of space. So just kind of be mindful of that when you're looking through there. All right. Let's see here, under your status and maintenance, obviously you have our alerts, where we can come in and we can see what's going on with our devices, what's happened with them. If something goes wrong, we can come in here, we can take a look at those, and we can clear them out if everything checks out okay. We can come in, clear them out, and they should go away after that. Let's see, call quality. You can have a look to see what your call quality looks like, kind of from a high view. Mitel uses it's called a MOS or a MOS score, with a predefined algorithm of what they consider to be a good call or a bad call. The only thing I'll mention with that is to be kind of careful, because it can be kind of skewed. Sometimes with that algorithm, it may flag a call as a bad call, even though it was good, or the opposite way around. So, I know it can be kind of difficult, but the best way I like to go about that is knowing what your users are experiencing by actually, finding out from them, right? And see here, the kind of other biggest thing I'll show here is going to be our event filters. So if, let's just say, for example, someone dials 911 and I want to know when they did that, without having, like, let's say, the special application. I can come in here and I can define, that specific Windows event, and it can send me an email, when that event happens, right? So the administration guide actually has all of the events defined so that you can know what event ID is associated with what kind of event, right? And let's see here, the last section is going to be just the diagnostics. The biggest part here is going to be the remote packet capture. We utilize this a lot when we're trying to, figure out what's going on, let's say with the call, quality or connectivity issues, trying to find out where a call stops or, something along those lines. That's the biggest thing there is the remote packet capture, right? And so that kind of concludes all of the sections there, and like I said, kind of an overall view. Again, the biggest thing is going to be everything is pretty much still the same for the folks who are used to the 14.2 platform, but just kind of a different look and feel. I guess the last thing I will mention here is actually this little search section here. So I mentioned the one search section where we can kind of hit star and jump to anything that's defined already. Here we can also kind of jump to different sections if we know the name of them, right? So if I know I want to go to hunt groups, I can just type it straight in here and it pulls up there. So again, that's just something a little different in the MiVoice Connect system, but all the same functionality, just in different places. So hopefully that was helpful for everyone, and I will let's pass it back over to Stephen.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. I do have one question. It looks like came through. David, is the Connect Director now supported in both VMware and Hyper-V?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you, Jonathan. Well, it looks like that is the conclusion of our questions. It looks like there were some technical issues during the call, so apologies to the folks that were impacted. This is being recorded, so you will be able to view it later. So with that, thank you for your time today. If you have any questions or you'd like to discuss upgrading to the latest version of Connect, please contact your IPC account manager. Thank you. Have a good day.